It's day 51 of 118 days with the Tudors, and today we're thinking about 1535. This is the year that we see Thomas Cromwell in charge of kind of everything, really, and it's the death of Thomas More. Here's where we see, I think, a bit of a contrast to the lovely, kindly Cromwell of Wolf Hall. If you saw yesterday's video, the execution of Elizabeth Barton really marked a turning point where we see Cromwell in charge of everything from the centre, and he's ensuring that the Act of Supremacy is being sworn to, as well as the Act of Succession. So he wants to make sure everybody swears an oath that they accept Henry as the head of the church, and if they don't accept, they're gone. Now, nobody is escaping Cromwell's long arm of the law, and he's interrogating people right down through society, even investigating people who are saying negative things about the divorce and making negative remarks about Anne. Cromwell has been given the power by the king to start visiting monasteries and ensuring that the monks who are there are going to take the oath as well, and also check everything's as it should be, which we know it won't be. But he's now got that power to start making those visitations. In April of this year, he starts sending out letters to the local JPs, the Justices of the Peace, to bishops and nobility, saying they should imprison any clergy who are still deferring power to the Pope over Henry. And on these letters, we see both the King's stamp and Cromwell's. A few weeks after these first letters have been sent, we start to get the first executions for the people who refuse to accept Henry as the head of the church. So in June, he is writing to all the clergy and saying that they need to be preaching in favour of the Act of Supremacy. So they need to be talking to their congregation and saying that this is a good thing. Now, one person who famously refused to take the oath was Thomas More, and again, you probably remember him from Wolf Hall and various other Tudor TV programmes. He's generally well known for his writing, things like Utopia. He was a very famous humanist. I won't talk too much about him today because he deserves his own video, really. In April of 1535, More refuses to take the oath. But what really winds everybody up is his silence. He won't defend himself. He won't explain why he won't do it. He just remains quiet and refuses. However, before he'd been imprisoned, he was kind of working opposed to the king and causing a bit of trouble. And the king knew this, and he's just taking his silence as kind of an extra little dig at Henry. Also, his absolute refusal to do what the king wanted was becoming embarrassing to the government and wasn't creating the best example for other people who were maybe on the fence. So really, he's got to go. Cromwell really wants him to sign the oath. He really doesn't want to have to execute More. He even tries to persuade him by ways of saying, you know, there's these monks, they have refused to take the oath, copying you here, this is kind of your fault, you know, you're leading other people to their executions. And while he's imprisoned, he writes to his daughter, and I'm just going to read this little quote. He says, "I do nobody harm, I say no one harm, I think no one harm, but wish everybody good. And if this be not enough to keep a man alive in good faith, I long not to live." His trial takes place on the 1st of July in 1535. As we often see, it wasn't a proper trial. We know what the outcome is going to be. However, once he gets his guilty verdict, then he can let rip a little bit and say all the things he's been bottling up in his silence. And he does say that the concept of Henry's royal supremacy is repugnant to the church and to God. He's sentenced to a traitor's death, so hung, drawing and quartering, but as is so often the case when they've been of a higher rank, that gets kind of put down to just a good old beheading. And he's executed at the Tower on the 6th of July 1535. Now, accounts of his death weren't allowed to be printed and circulated in England, but they do in Europe, and there's talk of him very much being a martyr, and they're all very shocked in Europe, particularly the Holy Roman Emperor, at the execution of More. So he's sort of achieving martyr status there. So that's 1535. You can feel things building, can't you? You can. It's all kind of bubbling away, all this bad stuff. We tend to think a lot of Henry being a bit of a monster for getting rid of his wives, but we're at a point now where if you talk about the fact that the king might die one day, if you say you don't agree with him being the head of the church, if you don't agree with his new queen, if you don't agree with anything, you don't really stand much of a shot of living. And Cromwell is enforcing this, and that kind of goes against that lovely sort of fatherly figure from All Fool, doesn't it? Tomorrow is 1536. We are going to sadly lose 2 of our queens tomorrow, and I think they need the justice of having a video each. So I will be posting 2 videos tomorrow. So join me tomorrow when I'll have 2 videos for you, and I will point you in the direction of another video that we're very lucky to have made for us. So see you tomorrow for 1536.